Hello, I'm Blake Davis, and today I will be installing the Vantrue N4 Pro Dashcam on my Bronco. The N4 Pro is a 3-channel dashcam. It has a front unit with front and cabin-facing cameras and a rear unit with a rear-facing camera. I've removed the front and middle roof panels to provide more light in the cabin for the install. I had previously done a quick install of the front camera unit just before a 5,000-mile road trip with my wife Chris, our cat Bennu, and dog Kepler. As seen in the video, the front unit had been placed on the passenger side of the rear view mirror. During that trip, the windshield cracked, so time to do it again now that the windshield has been replaced. This time, I will be installing the front camera unit on the driver's side just above the rear view mirror. I will also hardwire the power to the fuse box and install the rear camera in the top middle of the rear window within the windshield wiper cleaning area. The parts used from the Nexus 4 box include the front and rear camera units, front GPS UPS adhesive mount adapter, the 20-foot long rear camera USB-C cable, clear electrostatic stickers for the front and back windows. I also purchased the Vantrue hardwire kit, which I will use to power the units from the fuse box to provide both a constant power and an accessory mode power. The constant power allows event and motion recording when your Bronco is turned off and unattended. Also got a 90-degree USB-C female to male adapter and will be using zip ties. A minimal number of tools are also needed for the install. The N4 box includes orange plastic crowbar trim tool and adhesion promoter swabs. Additionally, I used a larger trim removal tool that I had, an 8mm hex socket driver, and a Torx Plus 30 bit for the driver's side grab handle removal. Let me show you the trim pieces that were removed or partially pried back. In the cargo storage area, I removed the plastic trim above the small storage compartment on the driver's side by hand. It removed easily with a very small amount of force. At the front door, I lowered the large plate under the steering wheel that covers the fuse box. This was done by hand and requires a little bit of force. I also completely removed the lower A-pillar trim cover using a trim removal tool. Since I am routing the USB cable along the bottom of the Bronco, I removed the driver's sill plate trim cover by hand in order to feed the cable in there. Using the Torx Plus 30 bit, I removed the 4 bolts holding the driver's side grab handle, as shown here. At the rear door, I removed the angled sill plate trim cover by hand, and then using the trim tool, I partially pried back the lower C-pillar trim cover behind the back door opening and the lower B-pillar trim cover between the front and back doors to feed the USB cable through there. I started the rear camera cable install from the cargo area working forward, starting with the cable tucked under the rear window weather strip. I made sure that I left 8 inches of cable slack for the camera so that the opening and closing of the rear window did not pull the cable out of the weather stripping. The cable is tucked under the window weather stripping along the top back and then down the window edge to the strut bracket. Next, it goes behind the trim in the gap under the body and finally angles down in the opening towards the C-pillar floor area. You can see the black cable in the opening here. Moving next to the rear driver door side, the cable runs behind the C-pillar trim and then is fed down under the sill plate with the other wires. There was a nice gap to tuck the USB-C cable alongside of the other bundled wires. You can see here that the gap as it was continued toward the front of the rear door. With the pried back B-pillar trim, the cable was then fished through and behind the B-pillar trim. As we move to the driver's door, It was very important to ensure that the cable was not interfering with any of the seatbelt mechanism as it emerged into the driver's side door area. The USB cable then continued across the driver's door sill plate and up the A-pillar by temporarily prying back the lower trim, and then up the A-pillar and past the exposed grab handle area to the upper A-pillar trim, tucking the cable under the trim towards the windshield. Next, we move on to the main hardwire kit power cable install, starting in the fuse box area. Both fuses 29 and 35 have been removed, as these provide constant and accessory power but were otherwise not being utilized. Using the smallest fuse adapters, I plugged the first one into fuse slot 29 and then connected that to the red constant power cable on the hardwire cable assembly kit. The second one plugged into fuse 35 and then connected that to the yellow accessory power cable. Making sure that the hardwire power USB cable had just enough cable to get to the camera by the rearview mirror, I ran the hardwire USB black cable out toward the door and then up the A-panel upper trim where the rear cable is already positioned. Next, I zip tied the excess USB cable and the red and yellow wires down by the fuse box once I double checked I had enough cable to reach my intended camera location. I also corrected the location of the black grounding wire to be behind the black bracket here using the 8mm socket to the grounding bolt. The first real challenge for running the cables was to tuck the two cables all the way up under the trim of the A-pillar next to the windshield and then across the top of the windshield toward the rear view mirror. This had a few tougher areas that needed a little bit more prying back of the trim to get the cables all the way under the trim. These two cables needed to come all the way across to just above the left side of the rear view mirror. This will then allow the camera to be positioned correctly above the rear view mirror with enough room to move it around also. To double check the connections before actually attaching the cameras to the front and rear windshields, you can take the listed steps to connect electric parts and turn on the Bronco. Once the camera turns on, you can click through the second button on the bottom of the front camera to see the various camera views showing the front-facing camera, the cabin camera, and then the rear-facing camera. It also shows you views with multiple cameras showing at once. Now that the camera is tested, I replace all of the trim before installing the camera on the windows. Starting with the kick plate covering the fuse box area under the steering wheel, I swing it up from its hinge and allow the positioning pins to be aligned and then snap into place using a little pressure and a couple mild blows on the panel. Next, I reinstall the driver's side grab handle with its 4 bolts after it has been aligned in place. The A-pillar lower trim gets put in place next to the grab handle. Make sure that the door jamb rubber weather seal is placed over the trim. The trim piece has a few alignment tabs and 4 snap pins. Once aligned, it requires only a little bit of pressure to make sure that it is seated correctly. The driver door sill plate easily goes in after positioning it as shown. Once it has been correctly positioned, a very small amount of pressure is needed to align and lock in the 3 snap tabs. Moving to the rear door, we position the rear door sill trim cover. This also requires minimum pressure in order to lock it into place. Then, moving to the B-pillar door trim that was previously peeled back, we ensure that the rubber door trim is correctly placed as we press the plastic trim into its snap pin locations. The C door trim took a little more effort in order to get it back into place. First, you need to make sure that the tab at the top of the fold is folded under the upper trim piece. Ensure the door's rubber weather seal is over the plastic trim and apply much more pressure to position it back into place across its 3 spring tabs. As I go back into the cargo area, we only need to replace this single piece of trim with 2 alignment and 4 snap pins, and it requires just a slight tap to put it back into place. For the front window GPS USB adapter install, I cleaned the placement area with window cleaner, wiped with excess with paper towels, and then dried the area with a cloth. The camera box comes with 2 electrostatic stickers that are 3 layers of plastic, one for the front and one for the back window. Using one of these, remove layer 1 first and place the middle layer that was exposed onto the cleaned window. I placed this on the driver's side up and to the right as far as I could, behind and above the rear view mirror. Ensure that any air bubbles are removed to ensure maximum adhesion. I then remove the second tab, leaving the middle layer on the window. Next, rub the adhesion promoter swab on the clear plastic sticker. Then remove the black tab off of the adhesion pad on the GPS USB adapter. Make sure the position provides space for both the power cable to the adapter and the rear camera cable connecting to the front and rear cameras. I connected the power cable to the GPS USB adapter and then firmly placed the adhesive pad on the GPS USB adapter against the electrostatic sticker on the window and hold it for a good minute. The process is similar for the rear window camera. One difference is that the rear camera directly adheres to the rear window electrostatic sticker since there is no GPS USB adapter. After cleaning the window, apply the 3-part electrostatic sticker in the same way. Tab 1, then the middle layer, then remove tab 2. Next, apply the adhesion promoter by swabbing the sticker. Remove the black tab from the rear camera mount adhesive. Make sure to position leaves the 8 inches of cable slack to allow window opening and closing. Then press the rear camera onto the electrostatic sticker and hold in place for 1 minute. On to our final step before a test ride. After removing the blue protective tape from the 2 lenses, connect the purchased 90-degree USB-C adapter to both the cable to the rear camera and to the top of the front camera. Attach the front camera to the GPS USB adapter using its magnetic interface. With the car powered on, the camera displays a logo screen. As before, you can press the bottom second button from the left to rotate the views between front, cabin, and rear camera views, as well as combination views of all 3 cameras. From Blake Davis Photography, I hope you found this video helpful for your own install. The last 20 seconds shows a ride of the mountains with our dog Kepler. The video includes views from the front camera and an upper right inset of the cabin camera. The upper left inset shows time-lapse from my GoPro camera on the Bronco accessory rail. May God bless your Bronco adventures. Take care.